Coming up on Theater Talk.
Commodity musicals are all that goes. They're all that we get.
Right.
The form is in terrible, terrible trouble right now. It'll survive because it's a great form. But right now it's being filled. It's being filled with junk.
Theater Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation. From New York City, this is Theater Talk. I'm producer Susan Haskins.
And I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post. It's time, Susan, to take a look at the spring season on Broadway with our critics panel, and we have brought out the heavy hitters.
Absolutely.
The really big guns. Not a tabloid hack among them. They're all broadsheet divas to tell us what's happening on Broadway and give us their opinions, good, bad, well, good and bad. We are joined tonight by our good friend Peter Marks of the Washington Post. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you very much.
Another good friend of ours, Ben Brantley of the New York Times. Welcome to Theater Talk, Ben.
Thank you very much.
And a great friend, Terry Teachout of the Wall Street Journal. Welcome to you all.
Good to be here.
All right, gentlemen, let's get the buzzsaws going. One Man, Two Guvnors is probably the big hit play of the season. It came from the National Theater. It's a very funny comedy based on an old Goldoni play. Ben, I believe you really were tickled pink with this.
Oh, I was in heaven. I'd seen it in London, and I did wonder if it would translate, if it would survive the voyage overseas. But at the same sort of nitrous oxide effect seemed to take over the audience when I saw it. It's so intelligently stupid. It really is. It does silliness as well as anything. And I think Nick Heitner and Richard Bean, the idea of putting it...
Nick Heitner, who directed, and Richard
Bean, who wrote it. Yeah. Putting it just on the cusp of the 60s before it all sort of starts to fall apart, before the explosion, the real liberation comes. It's like a seaside postcard from Brighton.
And it's set in Brighton.
Yeah.
And Peter, I thought some of the performers, the British performers that they brought over, some of the sharpest comic timing that I have seen ever, really.
Well, that's what I sort of fell in love with. I realized it's been so long, you know, the gaps between kind of just seamless comedians on Broadway just feels like forever. I mean, it's been a year since Book of Mormon, which I also loved, and this reminded me of just in terms of its irreverence. But yeah, I mean, there's something about the ability to just sort of let go in a theater and just let the comedy win you over. That used to happen a lot more on Broadway.
Yeah, noise is off. I mean, I'm trying to think of the last example.
Sly Fox was a famous example of this. It was also an adaptation.
The Richard Dreyfuss Sly Fox?
No, the old.
the George C. Scott Sly Fox.
Yes, exactly right. Yes, I'm 85, so I remember all these.
Terry, a note of dissension here. This one left you cold.
For the most part, didn't work for me. British mildly blue music hall comedy I don't think really translates into the American argot, except for one scene, the scene upstairs in the pub, which is a two-door, one-staircase farce. And for me, after I sat there for about an hour and a half or 3 hours, it's a long show, I forget how long it was, not laughing, and suddenly real physical comedy, beautifully engineered, beautifully timed, begins to kick in. And it was like somebody hit me with a cattle prod. And I spent about 30 minutes laughing as hard as I've ever laughed. And then the switch was thrown, and I was gone after.
But I think James Corden, who's
the star of
the
it.
sort of the major
marvelous.
domo, puts you at ease from the beginning.
And he captures the tone of it so well, too, because there's such an innocence about him. It's like, okay, I'm going to give you hell, but you're going to enjoy it. It's going to be fine.
So you do have to crank it up a little bit, and then it does get rolling.
This isn't that kind of farce. This is slapstick. This is who's on first. This is nudge, nudge, wink, wink. It's not one of those beautifully engineered farces where you work up to the explosion. It's not that kind of show.
I think it's pretty well engineered. I'm not a fan. I know the kind of comedy you're talking about. Yeah. I'm not a fan of Benny Hill. And I did wonder if I was not literally drunk, but when I saw it in London, I took two British
Critics
friends.
don't usually admit to this, you know.
But two British friends they were in heaven because it was what they had grown up on. It was sort of like, you know, ooh, sticky toffee pudding. It was really that kind of response. So I couldn't tell how much I was feeding off of them, but this time, I think it's really smart.
On to another comedy, Death of a Salesman.
Take my life, please.
The revival directed by the great Mike Nichols. I read your review, Ben, and this revival seems to miss for you. Just
It left me cold, and I know I'm in a minority on this.
You'll have your turn, Peter. Relax.
I much respected it. I thought it was beautiful to look at. I was thrilled to see that set, the original set.
Joe Malziner set.
And hear the music. Hoffman, for me, was pre-shrunk.
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Philip Seymour Hoffman as Willie Loman. I think there has to be in anything, if you're going to do it as tragedy or conceive it as tragedy, and I know the argument is that he's every man, he has to have somewhere to fall from. So even if he was never a big shot, he had to believe he was a big shot.
Very good point.
This man was shrunken into himself, defeated, I felt, in every scene.
You're hissing over here because you loved it.
Every time I see Salesman, there's a different relationship that it sort of pivots on. This time for me, it felt more like the father-son story than it ever has before. It really gels. It develops between Andrew Garfield's Biff and Philip Seymour Hoffman's Willie in a way that...
Andrew Garfield's James Dean?
Huh? I don't get that reference.
No,
Like James
he looks
Dean
like
in
James
East of
Dean.
Eden.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Forgive me. Let me finish, Ben.
Now, boys.
For me, the scene in which it's Biff who shatters Willie's dream
Right.
worked more powerfully than I've ever seen it work before. Now, maybe that's because I felt Garfield's performance really was the most developed. And I will grant you that, I mean, not all the pieces of this fit together seamlessly. I've never seen a Death of a Salesman where I thought all four performances worked perfectly in balance. I think it's a very difficult family to get right. But this time for me, the power of what they were doing together, even if Philip Seymour Hoffman seemed maybe like he could be Biff's older brother occasionally, it still had the sort of the elements for me that made me respond to what they were doing.
You know, I was completely on board with this production, and I'm not crazy about Death of a Salesman as a play, but lights up on that set, which we all think is in black and white because we've only seen still photographs of it, and you're stunned. And then Hoffman comes out, carrying those cases, looking like they each weigh a ton, and he goes, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. And I was immediately pulled into the world of the show. I think Linda Eman is the star of this show, by the way, but and Alex North, who wrote the music, which was used for
And Linda Eman, who's Linda.
Right, but nevertheless, this is a show that it takes, you have to overcome a certain amount of resistance with me to buy Death of a Salesman.
Why don't you like Death of a Salesman? It's an American classic.
Yeah,
What's your
well,
resistance
okay,
to
well,
it?
therefore, it must be good, right? No, I mean, I think like most of Miller's work, it's pseudo-poetic. But I bought this show that night, absolutely. It was a great moment in my theater-going life for me.
Ben, one of the things I thought that you got at in this production, and it's something interesting about Mike Nichols, because you remember seeing, I think, The Seagull with Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Right.
And sometimes in Mike's productions, one feels that the actors are not in the same world. That
It's almost as if you could, because he's done such incredibly fluid work with film,
Right.
if you could take the performances out and cut them and put them together, it might make more sense. I thought there was a certain disjunctiveness to it. I mean, I know Terry really liked Linda Eman, and she's one of my favorite actresses in New York. I thought she was a little strong for Linda, so when she's immediately, attention must be paid, she's there from the beginning. It's all sort of at the same pitch. You don't feel that she's, rising from this sort of cramped, suppressed posture that she's assumed most of her life. And
It's interesting about Nichols. I attended rehearsal of The Seagull for a piece for the Times, and Meryl Streep was on the stage. had just interviewed her, and she was very frustrated. She was standing there, and George C. Wolfe walked in, and she said something like, "Oh, thank God you're here. Maybe we can get somewhere now." It was like that kind of moment, and I felt, and Nichols was sitting sort of relaxed in the in the seats. And I wonder if that was the dynamic, that she wanted more direct, maybe
He's kind of laissez-faire.
Wait, it was George C. Scott?
No, George C. Wolfe.
Did
I say George C. Scott?
No, you said George C.
You said Wolfe.
I said Wolfe.
No, you said George C. Scott.
No, he said, well, play it back.
I agree. He said George C. Scott. Trust me. Okay, because I was thinking
did.
George.
All right, anyway.
But
All
George
right.
C. Wolfe came in. Oh, that's
getting old.
And did Nichols feel threatened at all?
No, and it wasn't. I wish I had more of the psychodrama to play back for you, but I got the impression that Nichols was laid back in general in terms of the direction, that they wanted more from him. So it makes sense what you're saying.
Right.
He's a performer's director because he was a performer, and a very good one. And I think he's one of those who simply wants to release the performance in the actor, to let them emit it and then shape it. And I know that he uses workshops. He did in this production.
He did, yeah.
To get
Intensely.
there. For me, it worked.
Another play that I always found quite interesting, timely now with an election coming on us, is Gore Vidal's The Best Man with James Earl Jones and Angela Lansbury. If just for those two actors alone to see them on stage, one should go.
Oh, I think they're splendid. My colleague Charles Isherwood reviewed that.
Yes, but you've been to see it. So
I've been to see it. I liked it quite a bit more. I think Charles felt that it was a little too artificial, too dated, sort of its time as far as Gore Vidal-style TV drama went. I liked the artificiality of the language. I liked that these people were so at ease speaking it. And I thought
George C. Scott.
George C. Scott was fabulous, absolutely fabulous, and the James Earl Jones part.
I thought James Earl Jones was amazing. And you hear the casting and you think, oh yeah, like there's going to be an African American president
In 1960,
right?
what it said.
And I didn't think about it for a second.
You buy it.
I really believe this man was A, dying, 2, was used to power,
Right.
3, understood how corrupt it all was and was still willing to immerse himself in it.
Not to be condescending, but then I found myself stepping outside myself and saying, isn't this remarkable how far we've come? That James Earl Jones is absolutely, you don't think for a moment about race.
Right.
Well, that's good acting,
Yeah.
Is it possible that the James Earl Jones, though, is an actor who transcends race
I think he
in
does,
some
yeah.
ways?
Well, but it's also a statement on the progression of the culture. But yeah,
A word about the play. This is a
Yeah.
really good play
Yes,
that I
it
think
is.
tends to be underrated.
It was better than I remembered.
It can play like a comedy. The first time I saw it was in a 100-seat theater. To see it on a Broadway scale, obviously the effects have to be amplified, and I thought the lead roles were mostly miscast. I mean,
The 2000 production.
No, in this
No,
one.
in this
Oh, in this one,
production.
oh.
You know, John Larroquette is a comedian, and he's playing Adlai Stevenson. He doesn't have the weight. But the play itself is so true to what happens in politics and to how people in power operate. It's really a remarkable piece of work.
John Kennedy told Gore Vidal after he saw this, he said, you know, we really don't think about it that much.
Oh, that's good. Well, we should
He
say,
probably did.
One of the things that I've always found fascinating about The Best Man is that Gore Vidal's essentially saying that unless you can seize power by any means necessary, you really are not going to be able to govern. If you can't win, there's no point. There's no point in you. You can be Adlai Stevenson. You can be have the most the noblest of intentions.
Right.
But if you can't play the game and win, doesn't count.
Well, that's
Well, that's what the
very
president
pertinent.
in the play says, but these questions are not closed.
Yes.
That's one of the nice things about the play. These questions are handled with real subtlety, a kind of subtlety that I wouldn't have expected from Vidal. It's the only stage work of his that I think has this kind of force. But
it was fascinating to me that a month and a half after Santorum raised contraception in a campaign in 2012, out of these mouths of these actors comes the issue of contraception.
And religion,
birth control is
50 years later, yeah.
But issues are no issues. This is a play about power, how you get it, what you do with it, what you have to do to get it, what you have to do to other people to get it.
Yeah.
And Vidal, you know, being from a political family, really understood that.
And I'm surprised that Candice Bergen worked for me.
I thought
Yes.
she was good.
Boy,
I'm
I didn't
very
think so.
moved
I
by
thought
her.
she was stiff as a board. I have to tell
Oh
you.
no! I thought
doing
she
very subtle
actually
things.
made the self-consciousness work with the character, and several people objected to her wig. I thought the wig was exactly the right wasp
That was
wig
right,
that
waspy
woman
woman.
had.
that time.
Yeah.
Did you at least like the wig, Terry?
I never noticed wigs.
If Linda even had been wearing that wig,
I would have noticed it.
She could have sold it. And Angela Lansbury is what, 86 now?
86, yeah.
I mean, such a complete performance, such a complete sense of the time. It's a wonderful performance. Yeah.
Credit to
Wonderful.
Michael Wilson,
Absolutely. I think
one of
he did
our
a
very
great job.
best
Yeah.
directors.
Yeah.
Right.
No, he did a very good job.
Speaking of power and how people grab power and hold on to it, the great musical about power seems to me Evita. Evita Peron. So, Ben, some people consider this a modern classic, but you've never been won over by
No,
by
no.
Evita?
Well, I actually really enjoyed it when Patti LuPone and Mandy Servers did it, and when Harold Prince.
Andy
Patinkin.
Patinkin.
Gentlemen, now you guys are seeing. This is what the theater up against critics who
Right, and
cannot
then
do
George
anything
Scott
straight.
in the role of
Mandy C. Wolf.
and George C. Scott, I thought was kind of amazing.
Absolutely great in there. That's right.
No, I loved it with Patinkin and LuPone. I liked the sort of neo-Brechtian staging that Harold Prince did.
That was a fantastic.
And it
production.
kind of distracted from the ultimate banality and emptiness of what's being said in it, I think. And to do it with this kind of respectful attitude as if it's La Traviata, which is really what they're doing.
Which is how the director Michael Grandage has approached this classic.
Yes, has envisioned it. To me, it needs all the sort of showbiz cattle prod that it can get.
Right.
The striking thing about Evita is the large-scale musical construction. It's a real musical entity, and you're listening to somebody who doesn't like Andrew Lloyd Webber especially, but that show really holds together in terms of the large-scale building of Shaynas, things like that. And as for this production, the star is Servers.
Michael Server.
He's getting acting lessons.
Oh no, he's marvelous, but he's only on for
that's
however
right.
many minutes it
A
is.
production of Evita in which you go away thinking about Cerberus is a production that has a problem.
He's Juan Perón.
Juan Perón.
Juan Perón, not
Can you
Server.
make the case for Ricky Martin for us?
No, are you out of your mind? Oh my
Oh,
God!
poor
He doesn't
Ricky
know
Martin.
he doesn't know what show he's in.
Well, he's doing his damnedest.
Oh,
He's at a Mike Nichols
smiling like
production.
it's like I'm expecting Willkommen Bienvenue Welcome from him. I mean,
Well, but except in a
no
Boy Scout
sense.
camp. I mean, he's very polite.
And Evita is wailing. I mean, that voice. I was like, you grabbed
Well,
your
this is
seat and you're.
we should say Elena Rogers, her name is, and she's Argentinian, and the big thing is she's authentic.
And not a very good singer.
It is kind of. I mean,
Doesn't have the pipes.
it's a very hard role to sing. To give her credit.
Terrific dancer.
Very good.
Yes,
dancer.
when she
Marvelous.
moves, it's
The
fine.
best
And the
line
opening,
on
I
that
think she's
stage.
best in the opening scenes when she's, wriggling it around as young Ava Duarte.
Do you like the show? Do you like it?
No, I don't like the show. For me, it's kind of like a pageant. I don't mean a beauty pageant. I mean, it feels almost like medieval. I mean, it's telling this story.
The play of Evita.
Yeah, it's right, exactly, like the Wakefield cycle. You know, I mean, it has its sort of like stations we visit, and
That's
then
so true, yeah.
and then it resolves. But there's really no story.
By the way, Walter Kerr did say when he reviewed the first production of Evita, he said, "This production takes a great step backward into the medieval morality."
Oh,
of all things.
You got it.
That's it.
Walter, so you touched on it. There is a revival also. I mean, Tim and Andrew are in their salad days on Broadway now of Jesus Christ Superstar.
What an awful show.
Oh,
Unfortunately,
agree.
I missed it.
Deliberately?
I agree with you on that, but I thought Des Mackinac did wonderful things with it, and I was just getting off on how he dealt with that job.
Well, more power to him. But when you got to put earplugs into a musical, you know, you're not getting the true value of the musical.
Oh well.
Just not a good piece of musical writing.
As a 13-year-old, I played Caiaphas at Camp Leonard. I just
Can't be objective.
You're excused from this jury,
Yes,
sir.
exactly.
Full disclosure.
Yeah. I mean, we did really like experimental stuff at camp, it's it's all gizmos. This production, it's all the performances are so flat. From the Jesus and from the Mary Magdalene, you get nothing.
But that was George C. Scott as Jesus. I thought,
Did you guys see it?
Yeah,
Did you feel? Did you
loved it? Yeah.
Oh, flat,
You like it?
flat as a pancake.
So from the blaring rock
Yes.
anthems of Andrew Lloyd Webber, let's get down to the once that
Yes.
love
Once is
set in Ireland.
Once
it's
is a
always-
good
it's
show.
always dark.
with Terry.
Everybody's poor, and every song.
It's not a
giving up.
musical, but it's a good show.
It's not a
play,
musical.
It's a play with
gonna,
songs.
Terry, it's going to
with
be
songs.
nominated for best musical.
It is a play with songs, and the songs are not especially memorable, but it is a wonderful play with songs, and it features a perfect performance by Kristen Milioti.
As we just as the girl.
As girl,
Right.
she's got star quality. She's lit from within, the ultimate definition of it. This little bitty thing comes out there on stage, and the light goes on.
Right. We should just say for people who haven't seen it that it's about two sort of struggling musicians who come together and never really consummate.
no.
Well,
Don't give it away,
No, it's a
darling.
well, I think it sort of goes without saying. It's a love manqué story.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And you were touched. You were moved by.
I liked it on Broadway, curiously.
Yeah, I remember you were a
I'm
little
really interested that you bought it on Broadway.
and
but
not off Broadway.
Yeah, well, first of all, I thought the music sounded much better. I thought they had a terrific sound system. I didn't like the book so much. I'm sort of the opposite of Terry. It was a little, although I love Enda Walsh, the Irish playwright who
Yeah, who
adapted
did
the
it,
book from the screenplay, it was a little twee for me. I'm Czech, I'm always serious. You know, that kind of thing sort of got on my nerves. But the other thing I realized seeing it, first of all, I loved the musical staging. I thought it was so interesting.
Well, those are the
so
Black Watch
organic.
guys.
Yeah, the Black Watch guys. Tiffany and Hoggett. Sounds like a grocers, don't they? And Also, this is a horrible thing to say, but I hold Broadway to a lower standard than I do Off-Broadway.
No.
I do. It's not in terms of polish, but in terms of originality. And on Broadway, this looks so new.
Yeah, fresh as paint.
Yeah, yeah.
Peter, I mean, frankly, it left me cold. My date was weepy and crying like all the girls, but my flesh was crawling.
I liked it a lot. I didn't fall in love with it until Broadway. Also, I mean, the second time through for me was the Sealer, and also, you know, some of it is, you know, you grade on a curve.
Yeah.
You look at what else is coming down the
absolutely
pike.
true.
And you see where is the vitality? Where are the people with the ingenuity? This is yes, it's adapted from a movie,
Yes.
like many of the shows that we're seeing, but done in an original way. It's like showing us another way to do it.
And the movie's not a commodity anyway.
Correct.
No, although I quite like the movie. Also, it lets you come to it, whereas the opposite, and the show that'll probably win the Tony for Best Musical, is a come at ya, Newsies!
Newsies.
Oh, we're gonna dance, we're gonna sing, watch me, watch me, watch me, I'm gonna do a cartwheel now.
That show exhausted my cartwheel quota through 2050.
I said that in 1890, whatever, they must have had newsboy jobs came with gym members.
Right, exactly.
Because they are the most tone guys in town. Those papers must have weighed 50 pounds.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're lifting those.
Awful show.
Does it depress you guys in any way that you've slaughtered this Newsies, and yet the industry is rallying around it, and it is very likely going to win the Tony Award
is a
over something that you
surprise?
think aims
Stop
higher,
press
which
for
is
this.
once.
Commodity musicals are all that goes. They're all that we get.
Right.
The form is in terrible, terrible trouble right now. It'll survive because it's a great form, but right now it's being filled. It's being filled with junk.
But may I say, as the so-called regular person in this room, that
You're not a regular.
You are not a regular person, not with those earrings.
my husband gave me these earrings, so stop it. All right.
Oh dear.
King of New York made me happy. I listened to it at the gym. I loved it. It was to me like Oliver, a little tapping little.
Well, Oliver
little
is
boys.
clearly the paradigm
Yes,
for
yes.
it.
And then, yes, there were problems, but you know, for those moments when then they had those boys tapping.
The tap number's good. That's the
Yeah.
one good thing in the show. It's staged beautifully, has tremendous energy, kinetic energy. That I liked. The rest of it, you know, take them out and shoot them.
Only Broadway validates forms that were, you know, old 20 years ago. In every other, you know, TV shows or movies that attempted to do what shows like Newsies do now would be laughed out of those industries. Only Broadway allows us to it's not even a reinvention. I mean, it's you know, it's a flabby old idea of how to do a show.
And remember, Newsies did not succeed as a
No.
movie.
No.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
So that's a risk. Disney was taking
Well,
a risk on a
it's also-
failed movie.
Let's
Well,
face
and
it,
it worked.
Disney has not had a major
Since The Lion King.
And there's,
Everything's
if you
been
talk about the industry
dog.
support, there is industry support for the idea that Disney can survive on Broadway, I think. And so this is like, B minus, yay.
All right, we got to wrap it up. Can you call our attention to something that's maybe off the radar, something people should be looking out for? Maybe something you haven't seen yet, but something that's coming up that you're excited about that's not Broadway, that's a little higher?
Oh yes, off-Broadway. It's Bedlam's production of Shaw's St. Joan, being done down at the Access Theater with 4 people.
Interesting.
And it is the most exciting Shaw revival I have ever seen in my life. Classic, poor theater, and it's long. It's 4 hours long. They cut the epilogue a little, that's all. But that show is, I don't know when I've been so thrilled.
Ben, you're on your way to London. Is there any?
Not until June. Although I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to seeing Eve Best as the Duchess of Malfi. How can you not?
Lucky man.
And even I'm going to be interested to see how Laurie Metcalf is in Long Day's Journey and Tonight.
With Nathan Lane out in Chicago.
No, that's
I'd fallen into the trap of making mistakes for the rest of them.
this is Laurie Metcalf. Laurie Metcalf and George C. Scott.
No,
Laurie
Linda
Metcalf.
Eamon Wolf is in there.
That's right. No, Larry Metcalf and David Suchet,
David
in
Suchet,
Long
you're
Day's
right,
Journey and
right.
Tonight in London.
And what's coming here, by the way, from London is a play whose name we're not allowed to say on television or
Oh,
at
right,
least
yes.
print in the Times.
Right.
Which
It
is-
means rooster or something. Well,
Yeah, exactly. Which it reads really well. Ben Whishaw did it in London.
Right.
I'm looking forward to that.
and we can say it's about cockfighting.
yes, we can.
Roosters
And
fighting.
about strutting virility and
We just can't say the
different forms of male sexuality. Yeah.
Right. And Peter, anything in your neck of the woods, Washington?
And one of the things I'm really looking forward to seeing soon, they'll die that I'm making this plug, it's a show called Beer Town, which is an audience participation show
drinking game?
That's being brought back. It's a kind of virtual community that's formed each night, and the audience actually votes on various aspects of the life in this community. It's supposed to sort of be about democracy, and I'm really curious about.
Sounds like the Mystery of Edwin Drood to me.
Yes,
Didn't
but
they vote?
not more participatory.
The Mystery of Edwin Drunk.
That's right. All right. Well, thanks a lot, guys. You're charming guests, and don't be offended. I'm afraid if you were in any plays that they bash. And Newsies, who cares? You're going to win the Tony Award.
That's right. They don't need us.
That's right. Peter Marks from the Washington Post, Terry Teachout from the Wall Street Journal, and Ben Brantley of the New York Times. Thanks a lot for being a guest on Theater Talk.
Falling slowly, sing your melody. I'm singing
You can sign up for viewer updates at theatertalk.org.
Or you can Twitter us. Our thanks to the Friends of Theater Talk for their significant contribution to this production. Theater Talk is made possible in part by the Frederick Lowe Foundation, the Eleanor Naylor Dana Charitable Trust, the Alan S. Gordon Foundation, the Corey and Bob Donnelly Charitable Fund, Carrie J. Fries, the Dorothy Strelson Foundation, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, and the New York State Council on the Arts, a state agency.
We welcome your questions or comments for Theater Talk. Thank you and good night.